Oh no!
Let's all go to the lobby.
And hello again. This is motion picture film. We're in a movie studio, and if we must have a title for this little opus you're about to see, we might as well call it
2 Cent Cinema.
All right, what's going on, everybody? It's Tom. Oh my God, in the flesh. What's going on? For those of you who are wondering, what the fuck is 2 Cent Cinema? Who the fuck is Tom? Well, first of all, the second of that question, go back episodes, I don't know, high 100s to probably 310, 320. In that episode range is when I appeared on Ono Radio Show. I was a talking head on the Ono Radio Show for many years. I'm also a segment producer for Ono Radio Show. And I also happen to sound incredibly sick today. I'll preface with saying I'm not. It's just my allergies woke up with me this morning and punched me repeatedly in the face. I'm up having my morning coffee, and I thought, why not talk about movies? I guess not really, because I'm not really talking about movies on this episode. But anyway, that's what we do on the show. It is a movie review podcast, or I guess just overall cinema movie talk. I would consider myself a cinephile. I work in the film industry, have for many years. Don't want to necessarily go down that rabbit hole. But yeah, I did this show quite frequently on break at the Ono Radio Show. And after hanging out with the captain himself, Mr. Owen Butler, he told me, hey man, you should do more of these 2 Cent Cinemas. You haven't done them. You know, you're dragging ass. Basically kind of lit a fire under my butt. So I thought I would do one. Again, for me, I'm just waking up, having my cup of coffee. And let's see, what do I want to talk about? I wrote it down here on my desk calendar. Ah, yes. All this hoopla, this controversy that's been going around in the news lately about people talking negatively or degrading the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This all started with Martin Scorsese. He had come off and said something along the lines that he did not consider Marvel movies cinematic. And it stirred up a giant nest of angry fanboy angst and anger, which then penetrated all over the internet, and it became a huge topic of conversation, with Marvel Universe directors chiming in like James Gunn, Jon Favreau, to name just a few. And just obviously everything from, you know, celebrities, people that have been in the Marvel movies, to people in Hollywood in general, just kind of chiming in on this idea or this question. Are Marvel movies cinematic? Are they cinema, is how it was truly phrased. Boy, loaded ass question. And to be honest with you, it's a subjective question, in my opinion. Excuse me. It's a very tough sell for some people to watch those films and say, oh, this is cinema. Because the definition of cinema to some people, like Martin Scorsese, who was literally probably, I think, alive in the 50s, born in the 50s, I'm sorry, and made his first hit couple of films in the 70s, and lived through a magnificent era of film that came out around that time. Everybody who were his peers were making incredible films at that time. And Scorsese's been one of those guys where I think he is a cinephile. He's always sold himself in that regard. The auteur, you know. For him to watch a Marvel movie and get it, I mean, that's completely up to Martin. And as he has stated, he doesn't deem it as cinema. I mean, you got to think about the kinds of movies this guy's putting up against Captain America or Black Panther or Thor, whatever Marvel movie. I mean, he's talking about the film school era, the 70s, the like I told you, the peers that he came up with, Spielberg, De Palma, Coppola, you know. Big movies came out in that time. The Godfather, Jaws, Scarface, just in general, the film school era, as people do call that era, the 70s and 80s. of just really big movies came out at that time. And people today talk about those movies and they typically attach it to, oh, cinema. It was very cinematic, blah, 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 blah. And Marvel movies on their own accord, and not to degrade Marvel films, I think some of the Marvel films are entertaining. They're fun to watch. If you asked me, Tom, do you think Marvel films are cinematic? I would probably say maybe, at times. Yeah, sometimes they have some pretty cinematic shots, I would say. If I were to describe a camera movement or a sequence that might have been shot, sure, I can't say that some of those things aren't cinematic. As a whole, if I were to compare it to a quote-unquote cinematic movie, like The Godfather, if you ever listen to people talk about what's cinematic, everybody always talks about The Godfather. When I was in film school, that was studied in textbooks, in camera books. Cinematic, this shot, this sequence. I mean, there were so many scenes that could be dissected from The Godfather. Take The Godfather, put it against Guardians of the Galaxy 2. No, it's not. Guardians of the Galaxy 2 is not cinematic if compared to a feature-length film like The Godfather. If I were to say the entire film of Guardians of the Galaxy is not cinematic. There may be an homage or a shot, again, or a sequence in that movie that comes off as cinematic. So there you go. We're tampering and we're kind of, it's a very loaded thing with that question. And the word cinematic, cinema. All right. I mean, I'm going to stop talking about it. Hold on. I'm going to sip my coffee. I've been neglecting it. I'm just watching it here get cold. Hold on. Edit my slurp out. But, basically, I'm gonna move off that topic. I wanted to talk about an actual thing I watched. But yeah, that is still getting a lot of heat in the press and news. I just read that John Woo recently kind of, he walked in on the conversation. He started saying some things recently. And, a lot of people dragged Scorsese through the mud on his response to that. And this will be the last thing I say, is that you can't begrudge a person for not agreeing with you. And that's what a lot of the toxic kind of fanboy shit does. The mob mentality of especially social media is people don't always have to see eye to eye with you, and especially a person of stature like Martin Scorsese. Come on, let's at least give him credit and an understanding with, hey, you know what? He kind of deserves not to get it if he doesn't want to. So just let him make his movies. Let him make his gangster flicks, and everybody will be more than happy for it. All right, moving on. Talking about something I watched recently, which is the typical hubbub for this show, if you're, again, first-time listener. This is a little off kilter because it's not a movie. It's an actual, here we are in the golden age of streaming and television. It's a series, and it recently launched on Disney's big titan of a Netflix competitor, Disney Plus. And I'm speaking about The Mandalorian. This is the first, I believe it's one of the first ever, or if not the first ever, live-action streaming Star Wars show. Produced, obviously, by the Disney brand. They brought Jon Favreau in to be kind of a creative head on it. He wrote and directed, from what I can tell, so far one episode, the pilot episode, which I did watch. And that's a big push for Disney Plus. It's one of their big anchor shows, their original content that they'll be streaming on their service. And there's been a lot of hype coming up to it. Trailers had been dropped, so and so. And basically it is a series that follows a bounty hunter who is a Mandalorian, very similar to Boba Fett from the Star Wars canon. Mandalorians wear the masks. They kind of have if not a secret religion, just kind of a backstory in the Star Wars universe. I'm not going to get too into that. But long and the short, as I did watch the pilot for The Mandalorian the other night, and it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. It was a pretty decent jump into this story. It definitely fired on all cylinders when coming to checking boxes. Definitely checking boxes for the die-hard Star Wars fans. definitely more of the older canon Star Wars fans. They did a lot of, I guess I would call it visual feasts that were in homage to, for instance, A New Hope. We were on the desert planet a lot. There were a lot of cantina scenes. There was a lot of blaster fighting. And yeah, it did. They almost poked fun at some of the Star Wars universe, which I thought was kind of funny. I won't give anything away spoiler-wise, but they were literally so on the nose with it and tongue-in-cheek that they were roasting one of the characters from the original Star Wars canon over a grill on a spit. And if you watch it, it is pretty funny. I will give them that. And that would have been the character I would have put on a barbecue and roasted. Besides that, the Disney sprinkle of fairy dust was totally on it. That was not devout at that. And again, not to spoil anything, I'm trying to turn a leaf and not do too much of a spoily review on things, maybe prior to some of my last 2-cent cinemas. That's why I am towing the line here. But the Disney side of things was alive and well. And the way I look at the Disney side of things is when you watch it as well, you're going to go, oh, they're going to make a stuffed animal of that. Oh, man, little kids are going to love this character. This is going to be a new thing that people can buy plushes of in the parks. And these are going to be on shelves and a toy line already made for them. You're going to see that probably in 2 characters. And one of the characters is, obviously, it's spilling all over the internet right now if you look up The Mandalorian. But you're going to see that. You're going to see, I think, possibly more of that interjection in some of the Disney guys of the show. That's probably my only gripe with The Mandalorian, and I think probably has been my gripe with most of the Star Wars rebirth that's happened with the Disney acquisition, is it's very Disneyed down, and some of it has become probably more of the ruin for older fans. We can't expect that to go away, but I will say at least The Mandalorian delivered on a lot of action, but keeping it in that familiar universe. I think they poised the story after the first trilogy, like the fall of the Empire it seems to have be taking place in. And they did a lot of setup. They set up the Mandalorian character. I never know his name. I'm going to have to probably cheat and look here on my IMDb. I do know how to describe the main character actor who plays Mandalorian. He was in Game of Thrones. In the Game of Thrones series, he played the Viper, the prince who ends up getting his face crushed in by the mountain. Again, his name is completely devoid of me. Oh, here we go. I'm now cheating using IMDb. Pedro Pascal. Pedro Pascal is the Mandalorian. Obviously, so far in the episode I watched, you don't really see his face. I wonder if they're going to keep that up, the kind of non-disclosing of the face. Boba Fett never took his mask off. It's in the lore of Mandalorians that they do not remove their masks. Interesting, I guess, choice and role for Pedro Pascal. However, he's under the costume doing all the stunts, I believe. Most of the stunts. He's kind of a very physical action hero-y guy in general. Especially the shit he was doing for Game of Thrones. So definitely a great role for him. You could hear him, obviously, as the voice of the Mandalorian. And I thought he played the character pretty well. It was, obviously left very mysterious. They kind of play on the Western, spaghetti Western, gunslinger motif, definitely, in this episode at least. I'm curious to how much of that will be the theme of the Mandalorian show, if it's kept in that kind of hired gun mentality, like the old school cowboy movie, cowboy shows that used to be on TV, but yet done in an intergalactic, Star Wars universe. I mean, it's very clever. That in that regard, kind of the idea and the theme and the feel of the story definitely came across well. And I think Jon Favreau is probably to credit for that. Jon Favreau obviously started Iron Man, was one of the first directors in the Marvel universe. And he's a good director. And Disney's a Disney darling. They love him. He does everything. He did freaking Lion King, Jungle Book, you name it. The guy, and now here he is attached to The Mandalorian, where I do believe he's one of the main writers, and I think he created the story as well. Other characters in The Mandalorian that stuck with me, there is a character who's this little, he looks like this little pig creature with a mustache, and apparently it's Nick Nolte. Nick Nolte definitely does the voice of the character. I don't know if he actually dressed up as the character and they filmed him, or if it's all CGI. Pretty funny. You can tell he's like the comic reliefy character. And again, he's just this little weird pig creature that the Mandalorian runs into on this planet that he goes to in the first episode. Carl Weathers is in it. Shout out to fucking Carl Weathers. That was a pleasant surprise. I'm like, yo, Carl Weathers, where you been? Apollo Creed, dude. Come on now. Yeah, he plays kind of the Mandalorian's boss, I guess, is his role. Not really sure if he has more than that, but so far that was kind of his thing. As the Mandalorian showed up, it was like, yo, where are my jobs? And, he threw down some bounties, and Werner Herzog is in it. That was a big kind of like, what the fuck? Always interesting to see him show up and shit. He's just a very interesting creative, let alone being a director himself. He's kind of just an eccentric person with his strange, whatever accent he has. What is Werner? I don't even know how to say his name. I'm looking at his IMDb. It's kind of... Oh, okay. It says he's from Germany, which makes sense. I completely hear the muffled, odd German accent that he tends to do in most of his characters that he plays and just his general self. He plays kind of like a client that the Mandalorian has to obviously do the job for. And again, not going to go down spoiler road. All right, I'm going to stop talking, but that's all I can kind of say. I guess if I were to give it I don't even know what rating system to do, a 1 to 10 rating system. We always kind of can never land on a good rating system here at 2 Cent Cinema, whether it's stars or thumbs up, thumbs down, 1 out of whatever. If we just took a stereotypical 1 out of 10 rating for The Mandalorian, I would throw it at about a 8. I feel it's in that safe zone. I did enjoy it. It was entertaining. I'm going to watch the second episode tonight, and I'm going to see where the story goes. I don't know how many episodes there are. I don't know. I know there is a plan for a season 2. They're that bold to come out and renew it and say it's coming back again. So it did pique my interest. Interesting story. Gives you, as a Star Wars lover, that little warm hug that we all want, and entices me to know what is in the future for this show, for The Mandalorian. That's pretty much it for me on 2 Cent Cinema. Thank you for listening. Maybe I'll do more of these. Like I said, Owen lit a fire under my ass and said, you should make more. So here I am, miraculously making another episode of 2 Cent Cinema. And who knows, maybe lightning will strike twice. Thank you so much, and now you can go back to, I don't know, doing whatever the fuck you do. Later.
2 Cent Cinema.
Everyone can enjoy the rich satisfactions that bowling offers. It's a friendly, family sport that anybody can fit into. It's a daytime, nighttime, year-round participating sport that offers more steady, wholesome recreation to more people than any other. 20 million regular bowlers confirm this. Bowling gives you all the benefits of consistent, healthful exercise without strain, so you can enjoy it all the years of your life.